Hello and welcome to this week's IG Live. We have a real treat for you today. We are going to be talking to Mr. G. That's actually Ben Gundersheimer. Most of you know him as Mr. G. He's a Latin GRAMMY award-winning musician. He's also an author and an educator, and we are very excited to have him here today. We are going to be talking about his wonderful books, which I have several of them here, and we're also going to be hearing some of the music behind them. So this is very exciting for me because I have been a fan as long as I've been blogging, and about almost as long as I've been a parent. Those are almost the same thing for me. They're really wonderful. It's so great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to see you.
Yes, I was just showing a few of your books here. But as we know, you also started off as a musician. So why don't we get started with talking about, first of all, was this something you always wanted to do? What was your journey to becoming an author and a musician?
Well, I announced to my parents, who are not musical, when I was about 3. There was some preschool, so I'm like, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a musician and a baseball player. And really never veered off of that. And so that, and I'm mentioning the baseball because it's relevant, because that's why I learned Spanish, because I thought I was delusional enough to think in junior high, when you had to pick a language, like, if I learn Spanish down the road, I'll be able to communicate with my major league teammates. And so there was a lot of forethought to it all.
You know, that's funny. I've heard a lot of reasons why people studied Spanish. I think that's the first time I've heard that.
I did it on playing baseball through college, but the Spanish didn't serve me in that capacity. But, you know, it's been a very interesting sort of organic journey into writing and performing for children, and now books. And then this bilingual component ended up being a really big part of it.
Yes, and that's one of the main things that you're known for, is the bilingual performances, the music, and of course now with the books. I wanted to talk about your most recent, whoops, sorry, wrong one. Your most recent book, that is also a recent one we'll get to in a minute, We'll Make Things Better Together. Sorry, I know the text is backwards, but it's a book. It's also your latest album. Can you tell us a little bit about it? I know the book was a part of the latest Reading is Fundamental National School campaign, which just launched. That's very exciting. Can you tell us about the book and the album and what inspired them?
Absolutely. So all the books to date, at least, originated as songs here in my studio. You know, a lot of the writing has this sort of cross-cultural unifying intent. So the title track speaks to that. And shout out to the illustrator of this book, Phumiruk, who's a remarkable artist. She's originally from Thailand, now based in Denver. But Dow just did a spectacular job bringing the manuscript to light. Really, yeah, just incredibly charming, sort of multicultural representation. And so in this instance, I had the song. When Dow did the book, I was so inspired by her work that it actually got me thinking about a whole album. I haven't done this before, but create an album tied to the book. So the album came out last month, and you know, it's all songs that work thematically under that We'll Make Things Better Together umbrella.
That's wonderful. And I know you said that the album just came out, and are you able to play a little bit of that for us?
Absolutely. I'll play you a little bit of the title track. Wake up with the rising sun, so happy that the day's begun. There's so much to do today. Now we're up and on our way. We'll make things better. We're better when we work together. At the park there's work to do. Lots of friends are helping too. Recycle bottles, pick up trash. We'll clean this place up in a flash. We'll make things better. Yeah, we're better when we work together. Everything is better. let them work together. And they go through there's a scene at a community garden, and then there's a band of kids that gets together. So just different ways that we're, you know, better when we work together rather than as individuals. So that's the idea.
Yeah, and the book is so beautiful because, as you mentioned, the illustrations just complement the song or the text so well, and then of course to have the music tie-in. One of the books that I think this was your first one, which now I believe is in its 13th printing. I was mentioning to you ahead of time when we were getting ready that just to show how much my family enjoys these books, my daughter has removed the original cover because she just loves the artwork. This is Señorita Mariposa, and it's one of my based on one of my favorite songs of yours. And it's now becoming a play. So I just love how, you know, it's all part of this creative process that you're in so many different formats and now play. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that process has been like?
Absolutely. It's yeah, I'll show. First of all, I love the story about your daughter having her way with the cover. They're meant to be used, but here is the cover. And shout out on this one to the illustrator, who's a long-term friend and collaborator. His name is Marcos Almada Rivero. He's Mexican, lives in Mexico City. And we collaborated originally on an album called Los Animales, which is the one that won the Latin GRAMMY Award. And then I was touring in Mexico not long after, and we met. This is years before we wrote the book and developed this friendship. So he's done many of our album covers. He also designs our T-shirts, but he did that book and also the one that came out earlier this year called How Many Squirrels Are in the World. But Marcos and I are thrilled because now that, as you mentioned, Señorita Mariposa is going to become a theatrical production. There's a wonderful, oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. Yeah, the book, just quickly, it's interesting, this transition and adaptation from songs to manuscripts, because as I'll play you a little of Señorita Mariposa, it just began sort of as right outside my studio here in the woods of Western Massachusetts. We've got a garden and the butterflies are there in the summer. It's just inspired by the beauty of nature right there, but with the manuscript really needed more sort of meat on the bone as a story, you know, and it's that. And so it became the story of the monarch butterfly migration from Canada, which was the illustration, the spread you just had is like when it's getting cold in Canada, the moose and all the Canadian creatures are saying goodbye to Señorita Mariposa as she begins her epic journey to the mountains of Michoacan in Mexico.
Further, yes, and I'll traveling all the way down.
Yeah, so there she's flying over the Mississippi River, and Marcos great touches, like you can see the arch, and yeah, really, really sweet. And incidentally, I have to say, right before the pandemic, Marcos and I went to visit the butterflies in the mountains of Michoacan. So this is one of these extraordinary facts of nature. They somehow know to all migrate to this very small mountain range in this state of Mexico, Michoacan. So there's this, to see them, you wake up before sunset, and sunrise, I should say, and it's chilly in the mountains. They're all clustered together. This is represented beautifully in the book. I play. So they're all sort of snuggled together in the cold morning, and when the sun gets to a certain point in the sky and warms their wings, there's this moment with the explosion of thousands, millions of eyes. So we had this silent moment on this mountaintop surrounded by them. So really powerful.
Oh, that's amazing. And now that it's becoming a play, what is that going to be like?
So first of all, I'll have to get back to you about that. We just formalized. Stages Theater Company in Minneapolis is commissioning this adaptation, and I'm going to handle the music, and I'm co-writing it with a wonderful Latinx playwright who's got a lot of experience, Mabel Reynoso. So we just had our first brainstorming session the other day to start conceiving of characters. And again, it'll be a fascinating process. I have no idea to what extent we'll adhere to the book or take it in different directions, but clearly there's all this capacity with the theater to do these immersive things. Right. So talking about bringing those illustrations to life and animating them around the theater. So I'll get back to you, but I know it's going to premiere next September in Minneapolis.
That is is amazing. I can imagine what an experience that would be. And it's a children's theater, you said, right?
Theater, Stages Theater Company, yeah. So very exciting, and of course, like yet another part of this process where I never could have conceived it, and but wonderful.
Branching out into another creative venture. And did you want to play a little of that song for us?
So the song just starts with the chorus. Señorita Mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Señorita Mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Te quiero a ti. Little butterfly, you just caught my eye. Little butterfly, flying through the sky. I'm so happy you're alive. Con tus alas preciosas, cuando te posas en la rosa. Your pretty orange wings, they make me wanna sing. Señorita Mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Señorita Mariposa, tú eres muy hermosa. Te quiero a ti. There's a little bit of it.
I love it. I'm very proud of myself. I didn't sing along. One of my favorite songs. And it also shows off, again, about how important being bilingual is in your music and talking to different cultures. And I should mention, I don't know if people could see it in the book, is also everything is bilingual in the book, in English and Spanish as well. And it also touches on the fact of your love for nature. I know the environment is really important to you, and a lot of your work is rooted in this love of nature. Of course, we talked about with the butterflies. And I think this is so neat. The U.S. Forest Service recently used your song Bats on the Brink to promote their Bat Week events, which must have been really wonderful. And then, of course, this is one of the books that we mentioned earlier, which is another recent one, How Many Squirrels Are in the World? And so why is it so important to instill this environmental awareness in children and this love of nature at a young age?
I just feel all of us, get invested in things we care about, just stating the obvious. And children are so open, and all they really need, and I believe this too with music and storytelling, all kinds of things, language acquisition, but specifically to your point about nature right now, if you give children experiences where they can be immersed in nature, and that's all you have to do in general, because it's so remarkable to go out and observe the butterflies, or just to take note of things, the change of the seasons, the wind, but adults have to model that for them and give them these experiences. With the U.S. Forest Service, that's become a wonderful relationship. We actually have a formal partnership with them now. And so we go every year to the Smithsonian and do an event for Pollinator Week. We're focused around Señorita Mariposa. Last year we did something around Bat Week there. And yes, there's a song called Bats on the Brink on the new album, which they actually, they commissioned the song, and they wanted to, bats sort of have a bad rap and people are scared of them. So they wanted to give me some talking points of how do we incorporate this to make bats, to shine a light on these remarkable pollinators and all the, so many fascinating things. Actually, such a long list, it's hard to distill into like a 2-3 minute song, but that was the task. So yeah, I just think it's really about giving kids nature immersion, and that'll do the trick. But without that, it's really hard for children, or adults for that matter, to be activated to take steps to preserve and protect this one planet we all share.
And what was the inspiration behind this book about the squirrels? Because squirrels are probably also a very underappreciated animal, even though they're all around us.
Well, squirrel, that's an interesting one, because We'll Make Things Better Together is my 14th album, but How Many Squirrels Are in the World appeared on my first album, and it was inspired originally so I had this, just to backtrack for a little bit, I had this long career writing and performing for adults, and then got a master, got a little burned out on the, call it the rock and roll world, and disenchanted with it, and wanted to use my music in a way that felt more impactful. Went back and got a master's of education, became an elementary school teacher. And it was really my students and taking breaks at lunch, and just kind of, the first album was called Pizza for Breakfast. You know, it's like part of it was just like silly things or things they thought were interesting. And then, but just being out of the playground with them, and ubiquitous squirrels. So, you know, it's that kind of thing. Like a lot of the inspiration, especially originally, was just being around my students and seeing what they were taking note of, and also just trying to delight them, you know, with.
Right. So I'll just show some of the illustrations from it, because this is all about kids. And I love also that it's a counting book. Yeah. So people can use it as how many squirrels are there?
Exactly. And it's also sort of a, you know, that, back to your environmental one, it's like this girl who's sort of a citizen scientist, and she's really determined to count the squirrels with the dog. And of course the dog has his agenda. And again, it's a tribute to Marcos, who also did Señorita Mariposa, illustrated this, and he's just got a wonderful sense of humor. And so there's, you know, I love art, always did, as a kid, and now that I'm, you know, an adult, particularly for children, that functions on multiple levels. So it's the kind of thing you can view this as a funny book. You can view it as a real learning tool for counting. Then there's the environmental component, and an adult will see something that a kid might not, in terms of humor. Yeah,
I love it. What did you want to play? Some from this one?
Sure. This has been a staple in the live show for years. You know, when we play it in theaters and all, we'll, you know, ask the kids how many squirrels are in the world. That's always fun, because the scientific inquiry from like 1 billion to 47 or whatever. I'm like, we'll have the kids, so anyone watching can do this. You'll see in the chorus. So like, you need a curious look on your face because you're becoming a scientist. And then we do this thing. You'll hear the chorus is, how many squirrels are in the world? We'll do call and response, getting them to sing that back to us. And then like, turn your arm, asking a question. So how many squirrels? And then turn your arms into the world. So it's like this. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? I'm looking high, I'm looking low, I'm counting squirrels everywhere I go. I see 1 + 2 makes 3. Wish I could join them in that tray. Now I see 4, the sycamore. Could that be 5? 5 a beehive. How many squirrels are in the world? How many squirrels are in the world? And I won't stop until I'm done, until I've counted everyone. So it gets sequentially higher, and as she tries to count all the squirrels in the world.
I love it, and it's such a fun song. And like you said, so much of your music and the books really function on different levels, and most of them are very upbeat, maybe kind of silly, but you do address some kind of heavier topics. And I thought we could end by talking about something a little more serious. Although you address it in different ways in your music, this idea about building bridges and fostering cross-cultural understanding, celebrating cultural diversity and understanding. But in particular, and the last book I wanted to talk about was the Lilah Tov, Good Night. And, you know, you talk a lot about how songs and stories, or I guess we could just say storytelling, which kind of bridges both of those, is a unifying tool to build these kind of bridges. Why is storytelling such a powerful way to do that? And then can you tell us the story specifically behind Lilah Tov?
Absolutely. Well, you know, I just feel like artists have this powerful tool, which is to, you know, harness, you know, I think music, songwriting, book writing, specifically, are just extraordinarily powerful vehicles for, particularly when these I should interrupt myself. I think collaborating in these contexts. So, for example, all the books have international illustrators. And, you know, when I submit them, you can imagine they're just words on the page. And then these artists from different countries bring them to life. Same thing with the music. And so, like with We'll Make Things Better Together, that song originated, as I said, here in the studio. And my friend Massamba Diop, who's this master walking drum artist from Senegal, who, if you've seen the movie Black Panther, that's him doing all that cool drum. But Massamba is a longtime friend and collaborator. And when we go on stage, you know, you've got a Jewish kid from Philadelphia, a Muslim from Dakar, Senegal. He's a foot taller than I am. I mean, it's like they're interesting cultural differences. But our friendship transcends that, and our musical expression, and also when we play together, it's a unique thing. I mean, just what we're bringing stylistically with our instruments. I think that's a beautiful thing, and that's sort of the musical analog to what's happening with these illustrators bringing the books to life. And you know, just in an increasingly polarized world, I feel like it's what I just always felt very joyful and natural now actually feels more vital, and frankly kind of activist to model those types of friendships and collaborations in the name of just like shared humanity and beauty, and trying to inspire people to see this is what happens when we work together.
Right. And Lilah Tov Goodnight, what was the inspiration behind that?
Okay, so Lilah Tov Goodnight is a bilingual Hebrew-English book based on a lullaby that appeared on an album called The Mitzvah Bus, which was commissioned by this terrific international nonprofit called PJ Library. Yes. Began as a simple lullaby, sort of an homage to nature. And I'll just play a little bit of that and then tell you how it evolved with this great Israeli illustrator. It's been a long and beautiful day. The sun got tired and went away. The moon is rising big and bright. Now it's time to say goodnight, Lilah Tov. Lilah Tov. So Lilah Tov means good night in Hebrew. And as the song proceeds, it's Lilah Tov to the birds in the trees, Lilah Tov to the fish in the sea, that kind of thing. So it's really just the perspective of a child saying good night to nature. The illustrator, who is Israeli, his name is Noar Naggan, he knew a little bit about my family history. My father was born in Nazi Germany in 1937. My grandparents in 1939. Many members of the family did not. And obviously, that's a very common story from that era. And he transformed what had been, as I said, a very simple lullaby nature to this extremely poignant refugee immigration narrative with the illustrations. So if you read the book, it's essentially what I have with the lyrics. But if you want to show some of the spreads,
I don't have a copy of it.
Well, let me then. Yeah, it was so poignant when he showed it to me. So here's the cover. And basically, this little girl is with her family. And here's sort of like this bucolic farm scene of their little village and the family. But so when it says the moon is rising big and bright, time to wish everyone good night. In fact, they're packing up their belongings. And this book particularly speaks to that point you made about like things working at multiple levels, because Lilah Tov to the roosters and hens, they're starting to just walk through the forest. Lilah Tov to the bears in their dens. They've got all the possessions they can carry on their back. Here they are getting into a little boat. And rowing across the ocean. So it's very poignant. But a child would just see this. The illustrations are spectacular. He's a beautiful artist with these wonderful illustrations, like Lilah Tove to the fish in the sea, down from the perspective of the fish. And then the next spread is like Lilah Tove to the birds in the trees, up with the birds. So, it's the kind of thing where a child would just marvels at the beauty, but we can see it through multiple perspectives. And Lilah Tove to the mountains and streams, here they've arrived in a new land and getting to this little cabin is their new home. So it was quite a moment when I saw the sketches for this. He lives in New York City, and we had never met, and we were performing in New York and had lunch afterwards. And it was very touching. He was sort of scared. He was very nervous to share this concept. He didn't know what I would think, and it was extremely moving to me, and has proven to be to others. And unfortunately, it's more sort of relevant now than ever before. But
yes, I was thinking about that as we were getting ready to come on about that. It seems especially relevant.
Yeah.
And I think just in general, I think that's a great note to end on, just to talk about this idea about cross-cultural understanding, building bridges, finding these points of commonality, especially that common refugee experience, even in groups that may seem so different to each other and at odds with each other, and yet there are these real commonalities that we can come together around. But actually, I wanted to ask you before we go, what is next for you? Do you have something that you're working on now? I know, of course, you have the play that's going to be coming out next September. Do you think you'll be doing more books anytime soon, or another album?
Yeah. Certainly the play is what I'm turning my attention to right now, but there are two books in the line. One is another book with Mariposa, and this is called Juana la Ballena, so that'll be out, and that's like, think of Señorita Mariposa from the bilingual book from the perspective of a baby great whale moving from her home in Baja California up to Alaska and all the adventures along the way. There's one based on my friendship and collaboration with Massamba, the Senegalese artist I mentioned. And there are a couple others that are in the pipeline, hopefully. So we'll see how those go. But I'm working on, always have like a number of projects going on simultaneously.
I love it. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and we will keep an eye out for that and be sure to share it on our channel when those do come out. It is such a pleasure to talk with you and get to hear the music. It was really special for you to be on with us today. So thank you for that.
Total treat, and thanks for all your support over the years. And it's wonderful to connect. Really appreciate you making it happen.
Well, thank you. And to everybody who's watching, if you joined us late, we'll have this up on Instagram in just a few minutes, and then later today on YouTube. Bye, everybody.
Take care.